Welcome to episode 4 of the Derestricted podcast. This episode is with Martin Petersson, a Swedish designer who I've known for over a decade and a half. We met at KISKA, where he was designing some of the KTM off-road bikes, as well as the KTM Crossbow. After that, he went to BMW in Munich before heading off to Tokyo on an adventure which lasted almost a decade, during which he designed a lot of the off-road bikes for Honda, including the CRF. He designed the 2 and 4 concept car and a lot of other projects. He recently took a job at Stark Future in Barcelona, where he is the design director. And I've known Martin for a long time. We used to ski together. Being Swedish, he's obviously a great skier. Actually used to telemark back in the day. But with the distance, we haven't spoken that much. So it was super nice to have a good chat with him. And hope you enjoy the conversation. Cheers.
I think KISKA was just like, when I was there, it grew from, I don't know, we were like 30 people in the beginning maybe.
Yeah.
And when I left, it was like more than 100. So it's just kind of a little bit of a Wild West and so much growth and so much things happening like all the time.
I have to say, having now run a business for 7 years, I have a lot more sympathy for Gerald Kiska than I did when I was when I was on the other end. It's much harder than it looks.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I mean, it's different, right? But being here now at Stark, it's also a kind of, something has to take the first step, and there's always going to be like, in that step, there is something that's a few steps behind. And then that side is catching up, and then you feel that there's a lack of maybe some structure or some kind of, but that's just the nature of it. Like you can't build like a company the size of, I don't know, BMW or Honda or whatever, without doing the work along the way, right? You can't just say like, okay, let's hire absolutely everyone we could possibly need for any situation, and so it's. I think KISKA was like that when I was there. It was really like a little bit wild, and suddenly lots of things happening in one department, another one standing still, and then that one catching up, and so on. But
the needs of a big company is so different than the needs within a small company.
Yeah.
A small company kind of there's a lot more multitasking, and you need kind of people with a wide range of skills. Whereas in when it scales, you need to have like the best specialists within specific areas, and it is a huge difference.
Yeah. And I guess is there a sweet spot there, like just below 70 people or something like that? It's still pretty much a kind of everyone, and
there's a book called The Tipping Point, and they talk about that. I think it was DuPont.
Okay.
DuPont, they found that as soon as a company scales over 100 people, communication breaks down. Like you say, people don't know who they are. So there's a kind of an optimum size. So they would like have 100 people in one building, and once they scale bigger, they would have 100 and other people. At least that's what they used to do.
Right. I know it from what's called Sapiens, what's his face? Noah Harari or something like that. Also talking about that, like when it grows below or above 70, 80 people, you're kind of doomed as a group, or at least not doomed. Like you need structure, and you need like systems in place that actually.
So how does Honda do it? I mean, how many employees are there at Honda?
I mean, they have proper structures and proper systems in place, and I'm probably not allowed to say exactly how many people work there, nor do I know actually how many people work there. But
is it very hierarchical, or it's very like segmented, and like how is it structured?
Let's say I think they probably have had some issues, like how do you say? Changing from a very old school kind of top-down type of system into something that's a bit more modern and flexible, let's say, right? So combine that with Japan's like general struggle in terms of having had a massive boom and then being quite stagnant for quite some time. It's difficult, and especially the big automotive companies they're giants, man. They're so big. And
can you make a difference? Like, can one person make a difference there, or is it really not about one person? It's really just about the collaboration of the team.
So in Honda's case, I would say like absolutely possible to like your effort as a single person can absolutely make a difference. They have a fantastic kind of bottom-up system where You could argue that it runs a little bit parallel to the regular work, but where every year there is a selection of proposals that just coming from whoever wants to propose something, and then the management and head office and so on, they will come and have a look at these ideas, and they have pretty great kind of budgets for developing these things, so you can take it quite far. And make it really into a nice looking model or a nice looking 3D model or a functioning engineering concept or something like that. And then quite a few of those, or like not quite a few in terms of percentage, but over the years, like they have selected quite a few, and they have become real products. So it's they have a cool system in place, but in the end, it's a massive machine.
How is working in Tokyo? Like you've absorbed all the Japanese culture. Like, how has that kind of swayed your design philosophy?
I've over those years become way more tolerant to like the design intention and the design direction changing over a project, while the European way, at least the way I see it, is kind of like there is a person, you pick that direction, that person gets to kind of control everyone else, and including like clay modelers or maybe testing side has to kind of really follow. Of course, it's a give and take, but let's say the Honda way is much more of that in terms of like let's say equality of input. So what I've learned from that I'm really trying to implement now in kind of this stage in my career is that you need to come up with a design theme that's strong enough to withstand changes, because there's a lot of designs these days that are like, or these days I sound like super old, but like there's a lot. It's so easy to get stuck in this, like, man, if this line moves like 2 mil, then the whole design comes crashing down. And like if I cannot keep like exactly like this direction on whatever, then the whole thing is going to come apart, kind of.
How do you design? How do you strike a balance between designing something trendy versus something timeless?
Oh, that's a massive one. Yeah.
I mean, trends shift every few years. Like, how do you,
Yeah.
or is it more important to make something that is trendy and like relevant today, or do you strive for something timeless? I mean, that's also an approach as well.
For us, the timeless direction is very important and absolutely what we strive for. But I think the question is also like, if we're talking on a global scale, then for some markets it's all trend. For some other markets and a demographic, it's all kind of timelessness. So it depends on what you're aiming for, right? And again, like if we take Honda as an example, so many different bikes, so many different markets. Like if you take some of the bikes that are really the kind of money-making bikes that are maybe for Southeast Asian market or something like that, they don't follow anything of the philosophy for the European bikes or vice versa, right? So depends so much on the product, and that's where, let's say, working for a smaller brand like now, you have the chance to actually kind of set that and decide where you want to go with it.
That's quite a nice segue actually in from where we were. So how did you end up at Stark? I mean, what was the catalyst for that change?
I saw their launch video. I mean, they kept it really quite secret. They kept it really secret up until their launch video, and it was the Hill brothers, right? They were riding the bike, and having worked on quite a few of the CRF generations, like that kind of, I could see that the bike's like really moving in a really good way, and not just like here's a couple of put together prototypes that they try to make look kind of nice or whatever. So you could see like, okay, this is a highly capable bike, and I just sent a message directly to the founder, Anton.
Did you?
And yeah,
amazing.
on good old LinkedIn. So and then we started talking a bit, and yeah. on that. That's how that came to me.
Amazing. Is it nice to be back in Europe? I mean, that must be a big culture shift as well.
No, but it's cool. It's cool. I mean, for sure, we miss a few things. Like you miss the, I don't know, the food. I miss the snow. I mean, Japan and powder skiing, backcountry
I'm gutted I
skiing.
never made it out to ski with you out there. I
It's
was
the
following
best,
your
man.
stories. It looked incredible.
It's the best. I've had such a good kind of so good winters over there, and so that's. I haven't really explored like the Pyrenees yet, but should be at least some good stuff available. But no, it was time. You know, been gone for many years, and from here a little bit easier to make it back to Sweden from time to time to hang out with family and my parents and all that stuff. So now it was time to try something new. A little bit stagnant. Also, I was always a contractor at Honda, so let's say from a career point of view, like I was very much a specialist at doing what I was doing. But if I wanted to like really, I don't know, try a different kind of position in the company, that door was like maybe not, you know, completely closed, but it would have been quite yeah, quite a challenge or quite a difference.
How is the corporate culture at Stark compared to Honda? I mean, that's you went from like this small company like KISKA to massive Honda, and then you're kind of now back in a smaller group. How many people are at Stark at the moment?
Honestly, I don't know exactly, but I think we're around 100, maybe a little bit more than 100, something like that. And they started in 2020, so and they were like 25 people, 15, 20 people, something like that, for quite a long time. And then spring 22, I think they started like really recruiting like properly or heavily. So a lot of us that are here now, we're like just finishing our first year or just kind of yeah, I've done like the first year. It's awesome. It's super good fun.
I mean,
The
electric
decision
bikes, man, they're
making.
changing the game. Like, you know, how is the shift to kind of electric influencing core design principles? Does it change
Whew,
anything?
uh,
I mean, it's a
in some
very
regard, not.
innovative product. Does that, you know, translate into design somehow?
From a package point of view and from a chassis point of view, for sure, yeah. But like if you approach it in a kind of honest way and like maybe coming back to what we talked about before, like to me, a lot of the current motorcycle design is slowly kind of painting itself into a corner by it's just plastic on top of plastic layers. Maybe it's wrong to say fake aero because some of that aero might have some purpose, but very little for kind of the general rider, right? So it's a lot of gimmicks. There's a lot of just creating character for the sake of creating character with plastic parts, basically. And I think this is a nice reset where you kind of let's let's approach again with an honesty that's like let's look at what this bike actually is doing. And of course, a motocross bike is a great base for that because it's a very functional kind of bike, right? So you need your ergonomic surfaces, you need your number plate area, you need your kind of front fender length in order to protect from mud and so on. But then what you do with those surfaces should be honest, and it should be, if you can, timeless and beautiful. It shouldn't be just adding a few parts on top of each other just because plastic is kind of cheap and that's how you create some kind of character.
How would you define
So
timeless? Is it minimal or something else?
uh, for me, timelessness is a lot about honesty. Yeah. So if you which means that that's why packages or like a great package and a great kind of underlay or a technical underlay is so important to get it right. Like the stance, the proportions of a bike comes from that like with a crappy package you can try all you want to make a good kind of stance and proportion, then you're forced to do that like exaggerated plastics and so on. I mean, some of the, I don't know, like I shouldn't mention maybe who, but like some brands are now their shrouds, like side spoilers, they're so aggressive that they're almost like in front of the front fork, like they're getting ridiculous. What are they like? What's the? There's no honesty in that.
Mm.
That's just styling for the sake of styling.
So do you use
So
that as a criteria for decision making? Like how do you consciously decide
100%,
what to include and what to leave out?
100%. Like now I have the fortunate position of actually and difficult position, but to decide that, and there is no, we will not be doing any kind of gimmicky toy-like styling for the sake of styling. We'll be honest. We'll try to make beautiful surfacing and not add a bunch of also like not add a bunch of like graphics and stripes that like what are they what are they doing? You
It doesn't
you
need
can
it
have like
either
a
on that product. It's so, like
yeah.
you say, it's so clean and honest. Yeah. That being said, I wonder how people will start differentiating their bikes, because the more of them that there are out there, the more people will start kind of playing with that. So it'd be quite
Oh,
interesting how
100%.
the graphic designers start playing with those surfaces and
Yeah. Now
destroying your honest approach
yeah.
with stripes.
No, we're in for it big time because not only like does the bike come with like the only graphics is like the little Varg logo on the side spoiler, right? And it's probably the best side spoiler in the history of motocross bikes in terms of applying graphics. It's a big, like curved surface, not too curved, so still easy to apply like
Not like the
decals and
cheese
stuff.
grater KTM.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's perfect for making graphic kits. And from our point of view, look, there's two sides here. There's one side that's like what we want as a company, and that's to keep it clean, keep it timeless, kind of minimalistic. But then there's also the private side of things, where there is a reason why most of us working here are into motocross, because we love motocross. We love it. It's good fun. Like it's not such a serious sport. Like lots of crazy colors and graphics over the year, and that's part of the fun with it, right? So I think we'll take it with a, what do you say? We take it with a smile, and it'll be super fun to just see what everyone comes up with, even if it's not what we would do like by ourselves, right? So
Can you discuss like some of the biggest design hurdles? Like as you switch from traditional combustion engines to electric, like what are some of the biggest challenges of designing a bike that's based on a completely different motor system?
First of all, it should be clear, like I have absolutely nothing to do with this bike, right? It was completely done before I started here. So that's why it's also cool to have it here behind me. Like it's not me showing off in any way. It's just saying that, hey, this is a pretty gorgeous bike that they did here, like before I got here. So I'm in a great position to try to carry it out onwards, right? Or carry on with that. Probably design-wise is a battery at the moment, with the way you stack cells, is, again, like if you want to stay honest, then a battery is a pretty boxy thing. You can create an interesting outline, and you can create interesting cooling features, if you yeah but besides that, it's a box. So maybe at some point, who knows, like with solid state batteries and so on, like there is a chance for more freeform type of stuff. But purely from a three-dimensional point of view, like what you can do with an electric bike, a sweet boxer sticking out, or a great like Ducati L Twin or something, creates a lot of character in the bike, while a battery, per definition, is pretty boxy.
We
So
just
that's
hide them in our
challenging.
bikes.
Yeah, in a great
I don't know if
way.
that's
In a great
honest or
way.
not. It's just what the consumer
Uh,
wants, I mean, there's so many downsides to having an integrated battery.
Right.
compared, because you have like overheating, you have to
Yeah.
like compromise the structure of the down tube to a certain degree.
Yeah.
It's harder to get out and charge it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of downsides, but the consumers just like, voted with their wallet and just only started buying in-tube bikes. So everybody made
Yeah.
the
Because
switch.
what, like the first 8 years were all like
They were all
external
external,
packs,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And they were lighter. There was a lot of advantages,
Yeah.
but consumers didn't want
Yeah.
it.
It looks. Having been sitting here talking about honesty and so on, it looks pretty great when it's in the frame.
That's quite an interesting point. Like, how do you, like, beyond commercial success, like, how do you define success in motorcycle design? Because in that case, like from an e-bike, if you're designing just an in-tube bike, you are designing for commercial success. You're maybe not designing for optimizing performance. I mean, I think we've gone full circle now, and the bikes are actually way better than they were at the beginning with external batteries. Like the new bikes are so good from pretty much
Right.
the majority of brands at the moment. So yeah, so that's one judgment criteria. But like, how do you define success in design?
It can live in parallel, right? Like you can have a super iconic product that never sold but made it into the history books for whatever reason. If I remember it right, there's like the story about the Lancia Stratos. It's like they couldn't sell it, but they needed to make like a certain amount of production cars to go rally racing, but no one wanted to buy it from the beginning, and now it's an absolute icon. I mean, it was an icon in terms of on the racing side, but I don't know. I think it's not black and white, or I think it can live in parallel. There's many ways of having success. Like if you're gonna have, let's say, limited commercial success, but become some kind of icon that ends up in a museum or in a design book or lives on like I don't know, a Britain or something like that. It's great to have a few other models that are commercially successful.
Yeah,
because for sure, for sure.
You'll have a bike in the museum, but you'll be bankrupt and out of a job. So.
Exactly. So combining them is kind of fine, but if you should have a few in the beginning, it's probably the commercial success that's more helpful to keep going. Yeah.
I mean, Stark does look extremely successful. I was in Taiwan recently and I met up with this American guy, and he told me he just ordered a Stark. Actually, he was waiting for it to be delivered to him in America. So
Cool.
that was one of the first
Cool.
times I heard of it. Actually, he was talking about this exciting
Yeah.
new electric motorcycle, and yeah, I looked it up after that, and yeah, I was quite impressed to see that you'd gone to work there.
It just makes so much sense. The whole concept just makes so much sense. I mean, you have the issue. So the issue of batteries, they're heavy, right? So compared to what you can do on the car side, where sure, put that weight low in some kind of skateboard platform, and even a super heavy car will behave quite well. But a super heavy bike will not behave well regardless, because ultimately you are controlling it with your body, right? So the motocross format so far is the one that really makes a lot of sense. And let's say commuting or urban mobility or that side.
Do you see any possibility of shifting to like from motocross racing? Do you think there's any possibility of shifting to electric, or do you think it's at the moment so ingrained?
But like road bikes and other kind of
no, like motocross.
categories, yeah.
Like, do you think they'll allow electric motocross bikes into the AMA Supercross, AMA Motocross Championship, or MXGP?
I mean, ultimately, yes. And like this is my personal opinion, but I think these things will live on a little bit in parallel for some time, and maybe for even a foreseeable future. That I don't see why you have to separate it so much. There's also been periods where 2-stroke and 4-stroke race together, and we've had multiple years or a long time where, let's say, Ducati was racing with 1200 cc while everyone else was racing 1000 cc in Superbike. So you can set this up in a way that it's fair. And to be honest, but this is super easy to set up in a fair way. Like the race organizers would have all the data they want from they could super easily see if there's been any kind of infringement. So we can set it, we can record, they can see it live. So it's great. I don't see any reason why not?
What did you say the top power mode was? It's 90 horsepower? What was it?
80.
80 horsepower. So,
Yeah.
like, if you go back to back on a regular motocross track with that bike behind you and a regular 450, like, are you looking at lap times? Like, how close are they?
I mean, if you ride this one if you're like good enough to ride it at 80 horsepower, which like no one so far has said like, yeah, 80 is the right level.
Yeah.
Like everyone puts it at like kind of equivalent to 450s, maybe a little bit more if you're just like if you're going on a sand track or something like that, you really want to have some extra power. Um, so sure, like if you could ride the 81 like at its maximum potential, like you'd be like way faster.
Does it have engine braking in the corners?
Yeah, you can set it. You can set it to like absolutely nothing, or like basically like a 125, or you can set it like way stronger than a 450. So that's what's kind of cool. You can set. At the moment, we there's two parameters, so power and regen, and there you can go in 1 horsepower increments from 10 horsepower all the way up to 80, and same with regen from I'm not 100% sure now, but from maybe 5-10% regen, which would be equivalent to, or like a little bit less than 125 probably, all the way up to like way more engine braking than a 450.
I'm clearly gonna have to come and try one at some point.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, because it's also fun. Like,
You know, I haven't ridden a
like,
motocross bike since I left Austria. That was
yeah,
how long ago was that? That's like 7 years ago, 8 years ago. After going from riding 3-4 times a week,
yeah,
as soon as I got an e-bike, I just stopped cold turkey and just was like full e-bike. It was quite.
yeah,
I never thought the last time I was going to ride a motocross bike, that was going to be the last time I was riding a motocross bike. But it just, yeah, I just haven't got back on one. It never really
yeah,
came up. There was never opportunity, and it just all the trails here. Unfortunately, you can't ride on a motocross
yeah,
bike. All the best trails you can only ride on a bicycle or an e-bike, and e-bike is like a better bicycle basically. So
right. I mean, that's one of the kind of beautiful things about Spain. They have a very high tolerance for enduro riding, motocross riding. Just like they have it in their, I don't know, culture for such a long time that there is no, and especially if you do a bit of trail riding on this, like, and people, and you bump into some hikers or whatever, like, hey, they're
it's
totally chill. They
quiet.
even like,
Yeah.
hey, great, like you're not noisy like the other guys. So
Is there an enduro version of that then? So can you get a road legal version?
like for now, there's only the motocross version.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess you can't talk about the
As
roadmap, but
but also like as all motocross versions or motocross bikes, like uh, of course a lot of parts could be shared with an enduro bike, but it also depends on market, because some of the like the US market, lots of off-road riding is anyway like non-road legal bikes. It's more like you go to an area, you do trail riding and so on, and then it's mostly a suspension kind of difference.
so just
But no, you'd love it, man. You got to come and try it, because also like when I biffed it on the jump here a couple of weeks ago, I was running 42 horsepower, which like was so much fun for a bad rider like myself. I had more than enough power, but not in a kind of uncomfortable way.
it's probably I'm more used to like braking with my right hand now, so you have like a handbrake on there, right? So it's actually
Yeah, we can
probably
set it up
I'd feel totally
if you want to
comfortable.
flip. Yeah, like you probably ride front brake left side, right?
No, I had to switch my brain after I lived in Germany for a few years. I grew up riding, yeah, front brake on the right, but I got so bored of changing my brakes around when I was working at high bike that I just switched my brain, and now it's more
Okay, so you're
natural with the back brake on the right.
okay, so you're back on kind of bicycle setup or mountain
Yeah,
bike setup, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. There's quite a few people here that also ride mountain bike, including myself. We ride moto setup, so to speak. And now with this bike, where you can get rear brake on the handlebar, then that feels like
Oh, that'd
perfectly
be
natural.
amazing. Yeah, wheelies
Yeah, it's
forever.
great. Oh man, you're good. What do you say? Like the feeling you have in your fingers is just like worlds apart to what you have in a chunky motocross boot on
Yeah,
your foot.
yeah,
So
exactly.
kind of you can be so much more precise and but you really have to think of it like I this is that you have so many bikes in one bike where up until now, like sure there's some like rain mode, off-road mode, street mode on kind of the on-road side of things, and a little bit on the motocross side. But now you can say like, okay, I'm going to buy this bike. It's capable of basically ripping my arms out. But I don't have to ride it on that level. I can ride it on 20 horsepower
Mm.
for this year. And then next year I can move up to 35 or like 1 horsepower per week or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, that's
So
brilliant.
you really have like a range in one package, which is pretty sweet. Like it's
You sure you're not the sales
that
guy
hasn't
at
changed.
the company?
As
Just,
I said, like I haven't
just
even been part of this development.
going back to design. So the path to mastery is kind of like a continuous learning curve. Like, how do you
Yeah.
approach learning and growth in the world of design? Have you changed your process over the years, especially as new tools come in? Like, how do you approach learning
Um,
as a designer?
uh, yeah, personally, like I wish I could like show some sketches or something because I've been super random over the years. Like almost every project is a kind of new, like it looks kind of different the way I sketch and so on. So I don't know. I've sketched so much over the years. Like at Honda, like I sketched so much. So in order to kind of entertain yourself, like trying different styles and just a new way of doing it. But it's only up until recently that I've kind of gotten into the more the VR stuff of things. And I mean, talking about AI, well, that's whole chunk. Like it's getting pretty interesting,
Mm.
somewhat scary, and I don't know. Like it's that side is
It's still,
yeah.
you just
What's
reminded
your
me of the Bikensteins, you know,
yeah, man?
like that was almost like a blueprint for a lot of the way that AI does its
That's true.
design. So
That's
anybody
true.
doesn't know, Martin and I, we were working on these Bikensteins when we were at KISKA. We were just having fun with kind of like taking a chassis of a random KTM and just making this mashup of, actually you came up with the term Bikenstein. I think I called it Frankenbike, and then you called it Bikenstein.
Frankenbike, Bikenstein,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's featured in quite a lot of places actually. Sideburn Mag ran some.
Popped up in Sideburn, yeah. It was cool.
Yeah, that
I
was
had
good.
we had
But
fun with
AI
that
is
stuff,
kind of like that,
definitely.
right? Like it takes this mishmash, it makes a mishmash of different bikes
Yeah.
depending on how you prompt it.
Sometimes I think you can see exactly where, or like sometimes, quite often you can see exactly from where it took something,
Yeah, you
and
can. Yeah,
you
yeah.
yeah, and you can even occasionally if you do like I don't know, blah 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 motorcycle sketch something, then you can even see like, oh, okay, I know that sketch. I know the sketch that this is based on. Like even though it's completely different, but you can pick up something with the color or the treatment or whatever. Um, I mean, but that's the beginning of it now. Like where would that be in not so far
I think it's quite
ahead? Or
interesting how that will tie in as well with kind of like an ego in design, or like people bringing a personality across in design. Like,
yeah,
how do you navigate the role of ego in in design, especially when trying to create something groundbreaking?
yeah, yeah. Good question, Beers.
Do you think
Um,
there is any place for an ego nowadays? I mean, the days of, Ferrari designing these just kind of iconic cars on its own, just legendary designers. Is it possible nowadays in the way design companies are structured and the way the market works?
um,
Is there a place for ego?
Good question.
AI is almost the absence of ego, isn't it? Because you kind of
Yeah, yeah.
takes it out completely.
I wonder if some of it has transitioned into a kind of more what to call it, like a more kind of reflective glory, that it's the person that controls this the AI tools or something that kind of it a little bit reflects back and it's more of
A mirror.
yeah, ego in that sense. But I don't know. No, I don't know.
Okay, going back to something more personal, other than, well, ego is pretty personal.
Sure is.
What's been the most transformative moment in your career? Like, not in terms of success, but in shaping your kind of worldview or designer view.
I can't come to think of something somewhat recent that put everything into perspective for myself. Where in 2020 I was on the way to a different company, and because of COVID, it kind of it fell apart at a very, very, very late stage, where I had already left my current job, and it was a fantastic lesson for me to really appreciate the just design work, because Honda they were fantastic, and they opened up the door again, even though I had basically just left for this other opportunity, and they opened the door, and I came back there, and I have never had so much fun in my work life as those couple of years up until now, basically, and that still carries on. So I think putting things in perspective, like we are so extremely lucky and fortunate to do this kind of the work we're doing. Super fun products, if it's e-mountain bikes or motorcycles, or like if you take the product in its essence, is it really needed? No, it's a fun product for to enjoy, right? So like the design side of it is it's not life or death or anything. It's an absolute luxury to kind of to work with, right? To create character with this kind of product. And I got a real reminder of how lucky I am to work with that by finding myself a little bit without that opportunity or without that in life, so to speak.
You came to appreciate it more.
Yeah, and really, really a lot. So like to the point where I have no problem. Like I arrive with a smile on my face most days. I have to say, like it's really we're so fortunate. This is yeah, and that's without getting too deep into that topic maybe, but look, of course, a lot of it is where you start in life and the possibilities that are presented, and having the safety in all kinds of ways, for family and the society you live in, and economically and so on, that gives you the possibility to actually try to go for that opportunity. And there, like most of us in this industry have had a great setup to begin with, probably to get to take this chance, let's say, and not go for a safer option. And it's a real shame when you see people who arrive doing this dream job of designing, if it's a car or a bike or products for that matter, or anything, and not enjoying it, because hey, come on, it's
So
design,
lucky.
it's fantastic, it's absolutely
Once
amazing.
you've had a few bad jobs, I've worked on a farm. I've worked on as a motorcycle courier. I worked in catering for like 3 years on the holidays. I even worked in McDonald's briefly for 3 weeks when I was 17.
Yeah.
I've done some really bad jobs. I worked in the office doing fulfillment, customer services. Like once you start becoming a
packing
designer,
IKEA furniture,
you're like, you're just kind of having fun all day, like in front of the computer, but you are optimizing for kind of like work enjoyment rather than, let's say, monetary gain, for example. Whereas if you go and work in the stock market, which is another thing I did just as a workplace briefly, my dad seemed to think that being a stockbroker was like the be all and end all, like probably the best job out there. And I tried it for a couple of weeks, and I just realized that wasn't. It was just you're just shifting numbers around on a screen, and just that wasn't for me. So being a designer, like you say, is very lucky, I think.
Right. I definitely wasted one opportunity, because during my years at Honda, I moved around a little bit. So for 2 years, I was a mixed between the automotive side and kind of advanced design. So we did a little bit of robot stuff and more on the product design stuff, and very kind of, like really innovative stuff that like I was too stubborn at that point to really appreciate what I could learn there, because I was just like, oh, like all I want to do is bikes, and here it's just like too many wheels or no wheels or like, and now in hindsight I'd say like, oh man, I could have learned so much more with a more open mindset of just the luxury of learning, right?
The benefit of hindsight. I mean, I think that's
Oh yeah,
if I look back at the lessons that I probably, when I like on reflection, you can kind of like analyze the past, and then you can kind of take the learnings out that maybe at the time they passed you by. So it sounds like you've done that a little bit at Honda. So it's important to do that. I think that's part of like everybody's growth journey. And I mean, that's actually brings me to another interesting question. Like, if you could meet a version of yourself 30 years in the future, what questions would you ask about motorcycle design?
I made a version of myself 30 years in the future.
Yeah. What questions would you ask yourself about motorcycle design? So there's Martin now with Martin in 30 years. What do you want to know? Martin in the future can tell you something. He's had 30 years more experience. He's seen 30 years more changes. What do you want to know about the future?
Yeah, okay. I want to know why it took so long to make a more adaptable rider triangle. So if you take the like hip point, handlebar, foot peg point of a motorcycle, why is that such a big issue on motorcycles? And why? Because any other modes of transportation, like personal, right, like bicycle, car, you set it up depending on your body size. But bikes are just like completely stuck in this, like, no, like that's fixed, that's fixed, that's fixed. Sure, you can put a different handlebar on, you can buy an aftermarket seat or something like that. But it's one of the things that I like. I can understand why it's not more standard to just offer a triangle that's like easy to adapt.
I mean,
it's a really wasted question. For like 30 years, I should have asked something. I should ask something way more.
The answer is make an electric bike, EMTB, because then you can adjust everything. You have the dropper post. You have like everything can move on a bicycle.
Yeah.
With offset bearings, you can have flip chips, so you can change the geometry. So it already exists in e-mountain biking. So maybe e-bikes are actually ahead of electric motorcycles in some ways.
Yeah. I've gotten into it, by the way. Like I started riding last year. Got a specialized. So like for me, all of this stuff is kind of new and cool, and just that kind of stuff. Like the fact that you can set like with this little flip. I don't know what to call them. Like for the swing arm setup, if it's like you have special names for it that's different, but like high position, low position, whatever.
Yeah, flip chip.
And flip chip.
Flip chip, yeah.
Flip chip, okay. And you have the same in like the headstock, right? Like like on mine you can turn and get like one.
Yeah.
You can get like one more degree or one less degree. Like it's cool. It's awesome. And I don't know, maybe it's because motorcycles are like way faster, and it's in that sense more dangerous, so you don't want to mess too much with geometry. And
I think it's just the way you ride is so different, isn't it? Like you sliding back and forth on the seat as opposed to maybe standing up on the pedals on an e-bike.
Yeah. But then again, it's also what we're seeing in MotoGP these days, like with the what do you call it? With a squat device, like the whole bike just like sits down after the corners, right, to get more grip, and same at the start and so on. Like, so maybe we'll be seeing a lot more of kind of adaptable geometry also while riding, and
is that what's helping the riders just get lower and lower and lower? I mean, I saw some photos, a video, was it 2 weeks ago? I can't even remember the rider, but he was going around a corner with his shoulder like completely on the apex of the corner.
Yeah,
I mean, these bikes are getting so good now that you can do stuff like that.
It's pretty ridiculous. Yeah. It's pretty ridiculous. I think for the cornering, the ride height device that doesn't influence that so much. It's more like out of the corner. they drop it
Mm.
in order to not have like too much of a kind of searching for grip. So you just like plant it and crack it open.
Okay.
What do I know? What do I know?
You still riding road bikes too?
Sometimes.
Did
Yeah,
you bring all your
sometimes,
bikes over
but
from Tokyo?
we actually shipped from Japan. Yeah, we had a bit of space in our containers. Yeah,
Wow.
took forever to import to Spain. Surprise, surprise.
So
Let's say those two systems don't really line up very well.
it's different language, isn't it? It's difficult.
So like, to start with, yeah.
Have you got any advice for young designers coming into the scene, like itching to make their mark? Maybe you can go back in the part, like 30 years back. What would you tell yourself? What would you tell an 18-year-old Martin or 16-year-old Martin?
To very, very quickly start understanding the chassis, the layout, the kind of the architecture of a bike. So that you don't end up in this path where you think that that design is creating character by just bodywork. Because I don't know many examples at least of like great designs that don't have a great package, a great kind of layout to start with. And if you don't understand that as a designer, if you have no idea like what you can reasonably do with a subframe, or how you could possibly, I don't know, package things in terms of, maybe the components that aren't like completely fixed, like you have your airbox, you have your battery needs to go somewhere. Like if you have a creative mind about how to kind of lay this out, you can create a base that is really giving you like a great set of cards to play with when it comes to actually playing out the design.
So it's more
But
than
if
kind
you
of aesthetics. It's really understanding packaging and coming up with layout ideas.
that's how I see bike design, and why I think it's so much more fun than most other kind of design fields. Like you could argue that, okay, you take car designs, right? Car design. You could argue that the actual vehicle, the car, is like happening in between two layers of design. You have your interior layer and your exterior layer, but the actual car that propulses you forwards and actually does the movement is in between, and you kind of never see it. And for some reason, I mean, part of it is homologation, kind of safety and all that, but for some reason, a lot of car designers have very, very little interest in bringing out any kind of technical elements or chassis elements and working with that in their design. While I think that's the beauty of motorcycle design, that you have to deal with that stuff.
Do you not
cannot
find
ignore it.
sometimes you're treading on the toes of the engineers and the product managers, or is that part of actually being a good designer as well? Is your ability to kind of collaborate well with people who perhaps have a different opinion on some of these things?
I think it works both ways. That there is not just toes; it's complete legs that are being absolutely brutally stepped on in both directions.
Is there a big difference in, like, from, for example, BMW to Honda in that respect, and to Stark? Is there a difference in the how receptive these companies are to ideas around packaging?
Like I can only say, like, from when I worked at BMW and when I worked at KISKA, which is like ages ago. So who knows? I don't know how it is today. But BMW had really good systems in place and very clear kind of, each department had like really clear agendas, let's say, or what they were let's say proudly doing. KISKA was probably way more open at that time, and here it's also way more open. Like, it has to do with the size of the company, right? So in our case, we are sitting in the same room as the engineers, so it makes it very hard to you're friends, you're working on the same thing. As soon as you put the two in different buildings and say, like, access card to this place like is something you can't have, but you can come in like at certain meetings and so, sure, then now you start creating separation and kind of a reason to not look at each other's work so much. So which is difficult to keep like that kind of openness when you scale, but
can you sometimes use like data and market research to kind of like back up an idea in that respect.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's one way to
100%.
navigate that. So then it becomes no longer about I think that, they think that. Like you're actually just putting numbers and data on the table.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think it's quite an unfair setup where it's much easier to collect data on how things look and how like if they're cool or if they have like I don't know nice colors or design wise like compared to like try to collect data on like how well stuff rides or like do you like this engineering solution for the like that's
Or you do a
people
first
don't.
principles analysis. So you can say, okay, this package ends up with, you take all these different components and then the overall weight is this versus this package where you
Yeah,
take all these components, the overall weight is this. So this one, A is lighter than B, therefore A is the right way if you're trying to like optimize for
sure.
lightweight, for example.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Definitely one good way or one way.
Then you can avoid the ego discussion, right?
Yeah,
But that, yeah, I mean, opinion is difficult. Like that's a hard thing to quantify. I mean, you can do market research, like you say, and you do get people coming in and they say, I like the look of that, or I don't like the look of that, but they often can't say why. A lot of the time it's just
not
pure mimetic desire. They've seen
yeah,
somebody else with it and they think that's what they like. It's actually, they're just kind of adopting somebody else's um,
not
desires.
not to mention not to mention that when you really ask people what they want, and you really listen to that and you bring that into like a next generation of something, uh, people will say like, okay, as an example, like the Africa Twin is amazing. It's comfortable. It can do this and this and that. But if I would improve it, I would have like better, I don't know, highway capability or something like that. So if you listen to that, you make something that's better for the highway, but you might in that process lose the original why it was so good, right? And there's plenty of examples of like listening too much to what the customers say they want instead of anticipating like, okay, you say that, but what you really want is this. And that's going to be a kind of gamble always, right? Like that's your interpretation of the data you get and the kind of feedback you get, and from I don't know clinics or whatever way of collecting data and market research. But ultimately, you have to translate that into what you really think it should mean in most of the time 3 years, 4 years, maybe even 5 years time. You have to take what they want today and imagine what they want in reality in 5 years.
How do you navigate
Which
that
is
difficulty? Like, do you think it comes down to like being confident? Like you're basically imagining a future that other people buy into or a future product that other people buy into. How do you get there?
I think one side is that you repetitively do that anyway. So if it's a big company and they have a nice fat budget about doing advanced design, then you do that in-house and internally anyway, and continuously. So you can kind of say like, but now it's probably time for this kind of new way of doing it.
Do you do A/B
And sure,
testing? Like, did they do A/B testing at Honda, for example?
I mean, they have their own ways, but I can't go into too much detail on like how they really get to their final decision
Give their
making, let's
trade
say. But
secrets away.
yeah, but it's everything from extremely kind of detailed stuff to sometimes you feel like it's a little bit like shooting from the hip kind of level. So I don't know. From a design side, like just keep trying, right? Like if you really believe in something, then yeah, you keep trying and you keep proposing it again and again. And sometimes you get like a nice like, hey, you remember a few years ago when I proposed this idea? You see this other company that just did it now and is like super successful.
I can't even tell you how many times that's happened the last,
Right,
especially the last couple
right.
of years, because like the e-bike industry is still so nascent, it's so early. So there were so
Yeah,
many obvious ideas that like we wanted to do. I mean, I also can't go too much into detail, which we kind of
yeah,
proposed
yeah,
ideas, but for one reason or another, they never happened, and now we see them kind of everywhere.
yeah,
So that's the
yeah.
I don't know if that's, I mean, it's somehow like bittersweet that, like it's nice that you see it happen, but it's just a shame that it maybe hasn't happened with you haven't done it.
I guess it's a bit like if you have a few of those, but you have a few successes as well, then fine. Ultimately, it would be sad if the world only had one car brand and one bike brand, because there's only one that can really deliver something that people want, right? It's fun that there is 10 plus motorcycle makers out there, and hopefully it goes a little bit in waves. Like, no one wants to have world dominance and be the only maker. Is okay, that's my personal opinion. So in that, if you're sometimes the one that get it right, and sometimes there's someone else that get it right, and sometimes you have exactly that situation of like, yeah, we thought about that. We have these wonderful prototypes that we could have pushed play on and been in production, but for whatever reason we didn't. Okay, use that argument to try again and be ahead in the next round. So
but it's also not, in fact, it's usually not the first to market with an innovative idea who wins.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
It's usually the person who does it better. They learn from the first people, and then they come out with a better iteration.
True that. Yeah, and sometimes even bad to be first. Like if people aren't ready for it, or let's say it requires a shift in how you use things, and it doesn't fit into that like regular way of using it, then you can stand there with your wonderful product that no one finds a place for in their kind of actual usage.
It does take sometimes like some really visionary people to push things like that through. Like I remember like my old business partner Alex Tuspas, like I remember he was at Eurobike years ago, and I just went to visit Eurobike. Well, actually I think it was still at KISKA at the time, and went on the high bike stand, and I was like, what the hell are these things? And he's like, it's an electric bicycle. You just pedal and then the motor kicks in. And I thought, well, that's kind of an interesting idea. Like, but there was nobody else doing it. People were just laughing at the bikes. And these were the first e-mountain bikes. And he said, you should go and try one. And so I went out to the car park, got on the bike, pedaled. I was like, woohoo, this is amazing. And then it just like braked, like, because it hit the 25 limit. And I was like, this sucks. And then you're stuck pedaling this heavy bike. And there wasn't an uphill where I could really like, appreciate the actual benefit of an e-bike. But I mean, he absolutely 100% believed in it and pushed high bike to its early success. So,
Why is it only 25 kilometers an hour in Europe? Because it's like 25 miles per hour in the States.
Which feels quite a lot better. Like 25 miles an hour is too slow, especially like if you take like a road bike and you're pedaling on the road, you can pretty easily like cruise at 30 kilometers an hour. And when you're on the e-bike, you hit 25 and it stops. It's too slow, but it's just I don't know, EU regulation. It would definitely be better if they adopted the US standard.
What's the penalties for derestricting?
It's pretty bad. It's equivalent to driving a motorcycle without insurance, which is actually what happened to me when I first arrived at KISKA. I don't know if you remember. I went to Berchtesgaden on my tuned 50cc scooter, and the police guy, he went past me and I was cruising back at like 80, and he did a U-turn, came behind me and pulled me over, and he said, you're not allowed to go 80. And I was like, why? The speed limit's 100 here. And he's like, no, this bike's only allowed to go 45. And I was like, yeah, but it's not safe going 45. The cars are going like 100. Yeah. And anyway, long story short, they put me in the back of the police car, took me down the station, confiscated my scooter, confiscated the exhaust. It took 6 months to get my bike back, by which point the whole motor had rusted because they took the exhaust off over the winter. So my scooter went in the bin, and then they fined me 1,500 euros for driving a uninsured bike or driving without a motorcycle license. So it's a similar thing with the e-bike.
For reals.
So yeah, unfortunately, I don't derestrict it anymore.
All right, like, have you had any situation where they actually like check at the trails, or like? Is it,
I haven't been pulled over. No, I haven't. And I think some places they're definitely stricter than other places. I mean, there's for sure people do derestrict, but actually another one of the big downsides is that it invalidates the warranty. So like, these bikes, they do break, and some motors more than others. And if you just spent, 8,000 euros on your new e-bike, and then you derestrict it, and then your motor breaks, they can see that you've derestricted it, and then you don't get a new motor. So that's a lot of money in the bin. So It sucks.
True that.
I'm not a
True
big
that.
fan of the speed limit, but you kind of get used to it as well. You just stop pedaling at
Yeah.
25 and just sit back and relax.
But that feeling, because now since I started cycling quite a bit, like that feeling of like you just reach it and it just feels like someone starts pulling
Yeah,
you.
you get used to
It's
it.
like as long as you're going downhill,
Just
no worries. But
de-restricted, man. You're in Spain, they won't care. But I didn't say do that. You didn't hear it from me. So okay, let's. I guess we should probably wrap this up. It's over an hour actually. So
Oh, cool.
so look, when you retire, what do you most want to be remembered for in motorcycle design? Do you have a bike
Oof.
that you like, or some bikes that you are particularly proud of designing, or is that still to come?
Um, I mean, what we did, like it's silly to say because I really consider myself a motorcycle designer only. I don't think I could design other things in a nice way, and nor would I really want to go into kind of other fields of design. But probably my best work is probably cars. So as ugly as I think the KTM crossbow is, what we did with that one was so outlandish, and the
I think the first
what we
generation of that car was badass, man. I remember like that was when I
is
first arrived at
nuts,
KISKA, they
right?
did that, and it was so progressive and interesting, and just taking the
Look,
philosophy of
like
a motorcycle into a car. That was just
yeah,
amazing.
like look when we worked on that, from a kind of surfacing point of view and purely kind of from a yeah surface and design refinement, it's like absolutely nothing special whatsoever. But from an architecture point of view, from a layout point of view, it's just insane basically. And the fact that we could push for that and have a group of people around us that a wanted it to happen, like spent all the money that was needed for it to happen, trusted a couple of 20 mid 20s late 20-year-old designers to go with that way. It was just ridiculous. So I
Mm.
feel extremely fortunate to have been part of that. And I, when I say like it's ugly, I just mean like it's really it's a car that could have been done in a way with like way more, let's say, classic beauty or whatever.
I think the
But
newer ones are getting in that direction. Like the newer one
they're
is
getting in
not
that, yeah,
really. I couldn't even recognize it really as a crossbow. Like the first
they're
one
like
is so iconic.
yeah, the later generations are like way better in terms of like actual design quality,
Mm.
but they've lost a little bit of that
Spirit.
the purity of the first generation, let's say. And then I did have the chance to do a very similar thing at Honda that unfortunately only made it into kind of concept car level. That was called Project 2 and 4.
That was amazing. I
That
remember
was
seeing that.
shown, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was shown at in Frankfurt 2014 or 15 or something like that. So that one is also like very very proud of what we did there. Um, which seems it I don't doesn't feel sad or anything, but like I think my best work is probably those two cars. So
Amazing.
for my motorcycle designer is a bit of a fail, I guess.
No, you've done plenty of good bikes too, man. And like, you probably have your best ones ahead of you. If I see the
That
bike
would be
behind
great.
you,
Yeah, I
there's
would hope so.
definitely, I imagine,
Yeah,
there's some exciting things coming.
we have such a nice team here as well that I'm yeah, it's going to be super fun to start like widening our model range and get some future products out there.
Can you say anything
So
about
this
that?
is this.
Or is it all top
No.
secret? No. Are you going to EICMA this year?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll be there.
cool. Do you still drink beer?
Yeah.
That's good. Many people stop drinking beer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we should definitely meet up then at EICMA. I'll come down as well.
Do they have a yeah? Do they have a reason, or
Oh,
why
it's
do
just
people stop?
health, getting older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What do they drink instead?
Water, I guess. Tea. Lots of tea.
I don't know. I don't know who it is, but some comedian or whatever that came up with this thing, right? That like sure, like if you live like super healthy, and I think you're like running tons, right?
Yeah.
And of course, like everyone, you need to take care of your body because it's the only one you get, and you feel tons better when you're in a good like exercise regimen and all of that stuff, right? But if you really live in a like super Spartan kind of way and just eat leafy greens and drink kombucha, then sure, the extension of your life, it's the one in the end, right? You don't get like 10 more years in your 30s. So you get like 10, 15 years more in the end, which
it's not so
kind
good.
of like, kind of.
There's another comedian, he said, some people, they don't eat salt, they don't eat lard, no alcohol, no cigarettes. He says,
Yeah.
you're going to feel like a damn fool laid up at the hospital dying from nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Martin,
yeah.
any last words of wisdom except keep drinking beer?
No, I think don't like for me right now or in general, one should not take things too seriously. One should enjoy like putting in a proper effort and really giving it your all. But one must remember that very few things are worth like grinding yourself to the very end for. And
it's very
yeah.
true words. I was thinking last night, I was talking to Yuli about I just reminiscing about the past, and I was thinking about KISKA and like how many times I was stressed out about various different topics, which at the time seemed like life or death thing. I couldn't remember a single one yesterday.
Yeah.
Like I just couldn't. Like they were just not really that important. And I think that if you approach it at the time, also with a little bit more of that mindset, it would have helped me at the time better, because they clearly weren't as important as I thought they were. So, like you say, like it's not that important, right? I mean, still got to try hard, work hard, like do your best. But
yeah. I guess you're in very much in a situation where the real kind of serious point of work is that you probably have people that are depending on their jobs and that's then family situation and everything that's going on there, and that's real. That should be taken very seriously, and should also mean that one should be pretty transparent with what's going on and be honest with mistakes, because let's face it, like we all make tons of mistakes. So it's fair to be open and honest with everything that's going on in the company, rather than trying to just force go ahead without, and then you have a bunch of people that basically take big risks. So I believe like a lot of honesty, a lot of openness with mistakes and so on, and the world will be pretty fine, pretty well.
The biggest the kind of advice which I read, I think it was from Marcus Aurelius, that's going back quite a long time. It was about it's just Stoic philosophy, is just to concentrate on things that you actually can influence, like things that you have no power over. You can't control other people. Like you got to just concentrate on the things where you can make a positive difference, and the things that you cannot make a positive difference, then like don't worry about them too much, because they're outside of your control. I mean, you can hope and guide and try to make sure that they end up good, but if it's outside of your control, like better concentrate on the things that you can influence. So, I wish I'd known that years ago.
But that's the journey, right? You get a little, like if we had all the information from the beginning, then probably wouldn't be so.
It is.
So
I'm sure the information was out there. It's just about when you're young, you just kind of ignore it, right?
Yeah. You probably thought it was more important to tune up your scooter there and go a little bit faster.
It's definitely the information was out there that wasn't actually allowed. Anyway, live and learn.
Yeah,
Martin, it's been a pleasure.
Indeed.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Hey, I'm wishing you the best of luck with the podcast. And,
cheers.
Thanks a million for letting me be one of the early people on it.
You're welcome. Hopefully the recording worked. We definitely had some issues with the sound at the start, so I need to.
We'll see.
We'll see if it comes out or not.
We'll do another one sometime in the future anyway.
Yeah, and we definitely see each other at EICMA. So.
Yeah.
Cheers, man.
And do swing by. We'll hook you up with a bike for a test ride.
Awesome. Let's try to make that happen.
Cool, man.
Take care, dude.
Take care.
Cheers.
Grease to the family.
Cheers.
Ciao.
Bye.